Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Namasave, and I work for the Wireless Broadband Alliance as VP for our industry alliances and our membership program. Today, we'll be conducting an interview with Khetan Gajjar, who works for the Telecom Infra project. He'll be sharing some insights around the TIP Open Wi-Fi and what they've been doing in the industry to advance wireless connectivity as well. Okay. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Khetan. Hi, Khetan. Welcome.
Thanks very much, Steve.
You're welcome. Great to have you on board. Perhaps we can start by having you introduce yourselves, what your role is at TIP, and maybe share a bit about your background, as you are a bit of an industry veteran as well.
Thanks very much for the opportunity, Steve. I'm here representing OpenWiFi for TIP. The Telecom Infra project is a global community of companies and organizations that work together to accelerate the development and deployment of open, disaggregated, and standard-based technology solutions that really deliver implementable and practical high-quality connectivity that the world needs, both now and in the decades to come. One of those project groups is OpenWiFi. Prior to TIP, I was working at Meta in the ecosystems team, really looking after Wi-Fi and Open Wi-Fi adoption and deployment. And prior to that, my previous background was working for Vodacom in South Africa, a large mobile operator, and I was looking after their IP products. And then 5 to 8 years before that, I was CTO of a business called Vast Networks, which operated a large-scale public Wi-Fi network with kind of 8 to 12 million subscribers. So, been in the Wi-Fi game formally since 2015. Been there as kind of a industry viewer and participant since 2012. But my first experience with Wi-Fi was really in the late 90s when I unpacked my first Zyxel access point with a PCMCIA card. And I think it's safe to say we've moved on quite a bit since then.
Certainly have. I remember those days as well, with fond memories. Thanks, Khetan. So you mentioned the Telecom Infra project, or TIP, and I think as we'll use that abbreviation going forward, and Open Wi-Fi. Perhaps can you share a bit more information about TIP and Open Wi-Fi, just a bit more about what it is, how it works, what the perceived benefits are?
Sure. So I mean, Open Wi-Fi is essentially a project group inside TIP, and it sits alongside other project groups like Open RAN and OOPT. But really, the goal of Open Wi-Fi is to deliver enterprise-grade Wi-Fi access points and associated controllers and software, so that we can get an open and interoperable ecosystem of access points and cloud controllers. So the idea is that traditional enterprise Wi-Fi systems tend to be closed environments. You have to buy the access point hardware, which comes preloaded with software, and you then have to buy a controller from one vendor. And once you've bought into that vendor, for better or worse, you're in that vendor's ecosystem. Managing multiples of those tends to be a complex and challenging operational deployment scenario, alongside any kind of commercial exposure or risk. So with Open Wi-Fi, you have the opportunity of multiple AP manufacturers, the ability to swap in or swap out the software on that access point, and then again, multiples of controllers. So at any point in time, if you are dissatisfied or you require additional performance from your access point or the controller or the software stack on the access point, you have carte blanche to pick and choose the right selection of vendors. I think in addition, the software is open sourced to community members, which really allows for community-driven feature and roadmap enhancements. So I think unlike a traditional vendor scenario, if a particular customer or deployment requires a specific tweak, fix, change in behavior, it's possible for that to be done because the software is available as a reference.
Okay, thank you. Very helpful. So, sort of building on that, it's been quite public, I think, some of the deployments for Open Wi-Fi around the globe. Could you share some of those deployments, I guess some sort of key use cases or case studies with us today?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think it's important to note that Open Wi-Fi only really launched in May 2021, and I think the promise that we launched with, and I think one we're adhering to and sticking to quite well, is for operators to have a faster time to market with kind of high quality standards-based implementation of enterprise-grade software and hardware. I think the key thing that we do is that we have a very strict adherence to complete standard open implementations rather than proprietary implementations. And that leads to technological innovation and change. So, I mean, when we launched in May 21, we launched with open roaming support kind of out the box. It was a standard part of the SDK and the feature set that we have. And every release since then includes open roaming support. And that's tested daily through a series of regression tests across all the access point manufacturers and cloud controller providers. In addition, I think we're one of the few entities that has a complete RADSec proxy solution that supports open roaming. And I think that really speaks to the complete implementation of a technology standard. In terms of specific deployments, we've had a few, and we have some more exciting ones coming. I mean, the ones that I can talk about today are we have Spectra, which is a large managed service provider in India, really focused around MDU and enterprise market. Boingo publicly stated that they're deploying open Wi-Fi in mission critical environments, and some MDU as well. We have Multinet in Pakistan recently, who has deployed for public Wi-Fi. And then we're in a trial with Virgin Media in Dublin. And that's particularly interesting because that complies with all the EU standards for public Wi-Fi provision. We have a series of other exciting deployments, but I think our marketing team would get quite upset if I steal their thunder. So I think watch the press. There are interesting deployments coming up literally every few weeks.
Thank you. No, very interesting. One thing also we observed, so recently in India, New Delhi, TIP were presenting at an event that the WBA co-hosted with the Broadband India Forum. It was on the delicensing of 6 gigahertz as well. We've noticed, I guess, a sort of high level of activity for TIP in the Indian market, but could you elaborate a bit more on why that is?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think one of the key things that TIP Open Wi-Fi enables is kind of a complete reference enterprise Wi-Fi system. So you have all the blocks. You have the blocks to design the hardware. You have the software that goes on that hardware, and then you have a controller to manage that entire infrastructure. And I think what's been particularly interesting in India is that India is a market that obviously has the scale and the technology and hardware capability that they've maximized with kind of an open source enterprise grade reference, which is what we provide. And so we've seen a series of Indian ecosystem providers, HFCL, Inventum, Indio. They're amongst a few that are there alongside other partners that we have like EdgeCore, who've gone into the Indian market. And thanks to Open Wi-Fi's open source nature and relatively low cost of deployment, they're able to compete, operate, build the complete system end to end. And again, thanks to that openness that we talked about, if there's a particular feature that's required and the community hasn't gotten around yet to building it, the Indian market has enough software development expertise to build that capability in and roll it out. So we've got some very practical examples of that where we had a customer who required, a Wi-Fi 6E wall mount unit, and from time of spec / enunciation of those requirements to deployment was 6 to 8 weeks. And I think that kind of cycle is incredibly impressive. I think what we also have seen is that the Indian market obviously has the scale and the size and kind of pent up demand. And I think what we're doing is we're the right enterprise grade solution with all the blocks available at a relatively low cost for people to pick up and run with.
Okay. Thank you. No, it makes sense as well. I mean, we have experience in the Indian market, and we can see how open Wi-Fi does lend itself as well. Okay. You mentioned open roaming a couple of times earlier on. Maybe you can just elaborate about how open Wi-Fi and open roaming, I guess, sort of coexist together as technologies. Is that something you can perhaps share a little on?
Sure. I mean, I think they're absolutely complementary. I think open Wi-Fi is a technology standard and system, and open roaming is a model for operators, venues, and providers to essentially all coexist and for want of a better word, move between different Wi-Fi networks and enable users to get online quickly. I think the key thing that I quite enjoy about open roaming is that a lot of the technical integration and bill settlement that used to be a bit of a black art has actually been standardized by an active and vibrant community. So I think what WBA does for us with open roaming is it brings a robust set of technical standards and a set of business processes behind them. And what we've done is we've picked that up and we've implemented it. So I think, open Wi-Fi in general itself being a community-driven initiative is quite supportive of other community-driven initiatives. Open roaming is something we supported out the box because we thought this is something that we should support, we need to support, and it's up to our customers and people who pick up the solution to decide if they want to implement it or not. I think we have a similar relationship with the Wi-Fi Alliance. I think we work very closely with the Wi-Fi Alliance. And like the WBA, the work that we do with WBA and Wi-Fi Alliance is really around taking those technical standards and implementing them in kind of a reference complete manner rather than a proprietary fashion. So I think we're here to kind of push forward and actually implement those standards that bodies like the WBA and the WFA put out there. I mean, another very good example is that, and a particularly hot topic over the last 18 months is that quality of service over Wi-Fi, aside from the Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and 7 enhancements, is something that the WFA has been speaking about and come up with a reference design for quite a while. And Open Wi-Fi is actually busy implementing, the Wi-Fi Alliance-based quality of service in a standards-based manner rather than in some of the proprietary solutions we see from the traditional incumbent enterprise Wi-Fi providers.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, I can certainly attest to the fact that the collaboration between WBA and TIP, particularly around open Wi-Fi, has been very healthy. I think has brought a lot to the industry as well. Do you see any other perceived benefits of coming out of the partnerships?
Well, I think I think the WA is a vital organization for us to work with. I think it really aids collaboration, between ourselves and our incumbent stakeholders and stakeholders that we haven't managed to reach or are unaware of what we're doing. So I think the WBA really is a results-driven organization that is continuously innovating. It's something that resonates with us because we'd like to think that we're also results-driven and continuously innovating. And I think the collaboration between WBA and Open Wi-Fi is a resource that benefits both organizations. I mean, in a single line, WBA gets agreement and drives a standard, and Open Wi-Fi actually goes ahead and implements it.
I agree as well, and we certainly look forward to continuing the partnership as well. I think those are all the questions that we have for today, Khetan, as well. So I want to thank you for coming on board as well and doing this. Um, just in terms of next steps, so I know that TIP will be present at the WBA's next Congress in Vegas in June, and we'll be speaking and in fact sponsoring that event as well. So look forward to seeing you there. Okay.
Thanks very much for the opportunity, Steve. I mean, I think the tagline that I'd like to leave with is our partnership with the WBA is something we value and treasure. Happy to support you in any way we can. We'd love to interact with you at the next WBA event. And I think, help us by joining the community. Go to the TIP OpenWiFi website, sign up, contribute, and as a community, we can really drive getting more people connected online. Thank you.
Thank you, and well said.